Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking time to do this interview.
Yeah, of course. Stoked.
Yeah, same here. Feels like this has been a long time coming to be able to pull this one off, but I'm glad that we're able to do it now and be able to talk about some Mythbegotten.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Me too. Been enjoying your coverage, both of us, but also generally. Yeah, excited to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, it's just like of course the debut album from Myth Begotten came out last year,
Yep.
which I was able to cover, and that's how we basically know each other, just from being able to randomly stumble upon Myth Begotten, but absolutely loving what I'm hearing, so much so that I wanted to cover it and be able to show off the band. And it's just been so cool to see what has happened since then. I mean, I've seen people who uh, wouldn't even be familiar with you from my work being able to discover the band and being able to see what you guys are capable of. And that just makes me so happy as well, too. Like, I love it when people discover a band because of myself covering it, but when other people just stumble upon the music as well, too, I know it's getting more reach. And that just makes me so happy to hear. And, over the past year, I'm just so glad to see everything that's happened with the band.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it definitely came as a welcome surprise to us. I've put out albums with other projects, but never kind of with zero live presence beforehand, aside from a project I did in college. And, even though I have some connections, Connor and Joe have some connections from like prior music work, we weren't sure how it was going to go putting this out into the world without doing the sort of normal build up of playing a bunch of shows and kind of developing a following that way. And we have been really pleased that the music has resonated with people and folks have stumbled upon it through either, your work, other reviewers, or just kind of poking around. And it's been really awesome just that people have been enjoying it.
Oh, very much so. With that in mind, with anyone that's not familiar with Myth Begotten, like, how did this all come together?
It's a bit of a long story. Back in 2011, Connor and I started hanging out. Connor had almost joined my like high school garage band type situation that a buddy of mine uh, was in with me, but we ended up meeting up. I found out he really liked Sonata Arctica. I liked Sonata Arctica, so we started chilling and then working on music. I, at the time, had really gone like gung ho into folk metal. It was around the time of like the Pagan Fest tours happening in the US, if you remember those.
I met my girlfriend of 12 years from Pagan Fest 2013. That was our
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
like
amazing.
that was our very first date. We were talking online and uh we well I just started, like, it was around a year that I was doing what I do under my former moniker of that drummer guy, and we were talking online and we're just wanting to hang out sometime. It's like, well, I'm covering Pagan Fest. Do you want to just come by and just like see what happens? And it was like, sure. And then like we've been together pretty much ever since.
That's so cool. Well, then, as I'm sure you're aware, those were, I think, to me and to a lot of people who kind of were getting into folk metal around then, just like they were really special shows and a real great kind of like, especially if you went to multiple of them, primer on just kind of great stuff happening in folk metal. And I got really jazzed about those. And we started working on some music. Both of us really liked power metal. Connor was also into folk metal stuff like I was, but then also kind of brought some diverse influences. Connor's a huge melodeath guy and a huge prog metal guy. Um, they're the one who showed me Devin Townsend for the first time back in the day. And I was bringing some like black metal influence in there too, and some avant-garde metal influence um, to the table. And so we started working stuff out, and eventually we did the Sterling demo after bringing Josh on. Oh my God, Joe on. And that was the first thing that Mythbegotten recorded, but obviously under the Hounds of Annan name. And we did one show in our capacity as Hounds of Annan at Sturmfire, which was sort of a local festival out in Western New York, put on by Throne of Wilderness, who were a Buffchester folk metal band who kind of flashed out, but it ended up being a really important moment for a lot of different bands. That's how I met Goblin from Goblin Hovel and Rob from Wandering Oak, who would then be in Goblin Hovel and in my other band, The Atrocity Tourist. Like a lot of those connections between me and Connor and Joe and the Western New York metal scene kind of were forged there, which was cool. From there, we kind of moved into like Connor was in grad school. Joe was working on a lot of job stuff and just life got busy. So it kind of went on the back burner for a little bit. I also went through a period of really bad writer's block. So I was working on Goblin Hovel stuff where I wasn't really writing, but was just singing. Um, and just not doing a lot of musical output of original work of mine. And I was reminded the other day by a friend of mine that what kind of broke it, the writer's block, was I saw Flummox for the first time a few years ago, and it just kind of shook me out of it. And was like, okay, back to it. And suddenly cobwebs totally flew off, and I started doing a ton of writing. And I think it was around that time that me and Connor and Joe decided, like, okay, we're gonna make this album happen. We've had a bunch of stuff written. We're gonna actually develop a plan, make this happen, record all the songs, and we actually did it, which was crazy. There had been a lot of hemming and hawing for years, and kind of like jokes that it would like maybe never happen. I had for a long time wanted to get this tattoo, which is the cover from the Sterling demo, and I wouldn't let myself get it until we had put out a full length. That was like my deal with myself. So it was very nice finally being able to get that and finally getting the music out in the world.
Oh yeah, that is just so cool, and I'm glad to see how it did culminate all together like that. I mean, sometimes it is under a different name, sometimes, it's just like members can change, sometimes like life just gets in the way, but I'm just so glad that it did come together the way that it did, and Myth Begotten is like a full on band now. It's just it's so cool to see that evolution of all that happening, and of course all the different influences which you can really hear throughout the entire album too. Like if you're looking for folk, if you're looking for power, if you're looking for blackened moments, you're looking for all these different moments that are going throughout the entire album, you can hear them in little herbs and spices, and it works so cool under this core sound that the band has. And yeah, just like re-listening to the album ever since we've been talking again, and just like being able to like really divulge even more into the album again a year later. It's just like it's so cool to see how it did turn out, and it does hold up just as well as much as I loved it when I first heard it. And yeah, I just love that.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to we're all very diverse listeners in terms of genre. Like we all love metal, but listen to kind of differing things within that, and then also listen to a lot outside of that. And I think all three of us kind of find music the most interesting when it kind of bends some of the genre rules. A lot of the music I've ended up making or being involved in has been kind of like there's a framework that it's sort of this genre. You can like put it in that box, and it's not incorrect. But then there's lots of other little, as you say, herbs and spices from different things, like a dash of tech death here, a dash of like country here, or what have you. And That's been a really fun element of working on the Mythbegotten stuff, is just kind of figuring out what we can combine in interesting ways, especially to sort of fit with the subject matter we're going for. There's been some songs where it's subject matter first, then the song being written afterwards, and some where it's the song is written and then, figuring out lyrics that go with that vibe. Um, but putting that puzzle together is always really interesting.
So, in speaking of that puzzle, I was actually going to ask about that because, like, it really does feel like the lyrical content on this album is so deep. So, I was curious about like what came first when it came to the music or the lyrics and the theme. But like, when you were putting this puzzle together to make everything work, like, how much of a challenge was that for you to make sure everything was like going? Like, was there any like stumbling blocks along the way when it came to like when you were actually like getting down and making sure this album was going to happen? Was there like any major problems that happened with that, or did it go smooth?
Oh yeah, there were definitely some challenges and moments where like a song was gonna be about one thing and then it pivoted. One goes way back. The uh Beneath Exham Priory was originally called, back in like 2013 or something. The riff we had titled as The Ghost of Harrenhal, and I was going to write it about the section of the, gosh, I think like second or third Game of Thrones book where Arya Stark is like sneaking around Harrenhal doing these assassinations. Um, and and then basically Game of Thrones blew up, and we are like, well, now this seems too on the nose, so we have to do about something else. And ended up pivoting to the Lovecraft story. And then with Of Wrath and Ruin, I toyed briefly with instead doing it about, instead of Lord of the Rings, doing it about this big battle from Irish mythology. And while I would potentially like to revisit that particular topic, it was written to be about the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and ultimately went like, okay, yeah, no, we just need to flesh this out. And then, certain tracks just took longer than others to kind of get that sense of inspiration. I'm a very sort of, um, not to get too like woo with it, I tend to think of lyric writing and also my musical creation process as sort of a channeling of the muse, and either inspiration's hitting or it's not. And I don't like to force it, especially with like lyric writing. Like if you try to like, it's gotta be this particular vibe, but then just nothing's coming, it's probably not meant to be. Like probably move on to a different topic or revisit it later. So one, I remember the Terror of Lothian for a while, bouncing around different concepts. I think one of them might have been more military history based, um, but ended up going with the story of Sonny Bean, which ended up feeling very fitting for it, I think. But it was, really satisfying because of those challenges when it all came together. And I think all the more satisfying that it did end up cohesive, and I think with the topics and sounds gelling as well as they did.
And and to go along with that as well too, like making sure that all the songs fit together in album form as well too. It's like there's so many things that go into it, like track order and production and everything that goes in there to make sure that all the songs like coincide with each other. And I just love the way that that turned out as well too. The entire vibe throughout the entire album, when you're telling all these different stories of all this different IP that's going through there, whether you're going into Lovecraftian stuff, whether you're going into more modern times, whatever it's based on, like when you close your eyes, you really do get the feeling of any story that's going on. Like you close your eyes and you really feel like you're hearing it. And that's what I keep going back to the album for, is like it really just does feel like that. And sometimes like you were just mentioning before, it's just like you want to have that muse, you want to be inspired, you want to make sure that it's something that you're able to pull off. Well, I can more than honestly say that you really did pull that off because it works for me every single time that I listen to it.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Um, and yeah, that as a lyricist, I'm the so far pretty much the exclusive lyricist for the band. Although we do group revisions, so I'll have my first draft, and then usually we'll have like a Google Doc, and Connor and Joe will go through and it's like maybe change this word to this word, or like this scan's a little weird. Um, and then Joe did write, there's a section in Old English in Of Wrath and Ruin, which Joe took care of. It's some of it written by him in Old English, and some is translation of some Tolkien stuff into Old English, and then sung by Corinne, who did the operatic vocals. But yeah, as a lyricist, the thing that I enjoy the most and that I feel suits my style and my abilities best is fundamentally storytelling. You know, over the years, I've tried writing more personal material or more topical material. And for whatever reason, that's just never been what I've really clicked with as a lyricist. I just like telling stories. And, growing up, I was a big fan of folk tales and fantasy. The old BBC series, The Storyteller with John Hurt, was a huge fan of and watched a lot as a kid. And, coming from kind of a theatrical family, my parents are both actors and former acting professors. I think just that love of storytelling is something I really try to capture with the lyrical and thematic approach.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, when it comes through all of that as well, too, I mean, you want to make sure that you are inspired when you are coming up with lyrics, and the fact that you can do that through like folklore or other stories that you want to be able to tell. But of course, it's not to say that that couldn't be pulled off if you were just a lyricist, but you got to be able to have some vocal ability, be able to pull these stories off. And one of, if not my favorite aspect of the entire album is your vocal range. Like, whether you're going deeper, whether you're going higher, that whole full vocal range that you go for, you know what to hit, you know what to sing, and to make sure that you have as much power behind it when it's needed, more laid back when it needs to. Like, you really put your heart and soul into this, and I can hear that every single time I go back to this one. And it's just like it's one of my favorite aspects is just hearing your vocal ability throughout this entire album.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the main thing I can credit it to, aside from coming from a pretty musical family, is I was in Syracuse Children's Choir as a youth. My parents put me in it, and as a result, there's definitely pictures somewhere of like me as a kid in like a white dress shirt with a red cummerbund singing in like a church somewhere. Uh, but yeah, it definitely was good for sort of internalizing those fundamentals. I don't have a great sense of theory personally. I'm the least uh, theory literate person in the band, which has worked out well because you have Connor and Joe who really know their music theory and notation and everything, and me coming at it from more of a sort of naive approach. The way have kind of talked about it before, which is incredibly nerdy, but you have in D&D sorcerers just kind of innately do magic, whereas wizards study and know how the magic works and the sort of framework of it. I'm a music sorcerer. I'm not a music wizard. Um, but yeah, I think that that foundation in sort of choral music definitely helped. And then having those years doing the whole Goblin Hovel thing and kind of testing the limits of my range and honing on some of those things has been really beneficial. Also, I love singing, and so it's really fun to work on this stuff, especially because for Mythbegotten, since I'm coming up with the majority of the vocal melodies, a lot of it does just end up being what I think would be fun to sing. And I think a lot of our writing process across the board for the three of us is sort of just making the music we want to hear, and putting that out there. So it's really satisfying to work on. And I hope with our future releases, we'll have some more fun, different vocal moments. There's one song that we cut from this album because, as you know from the Sterling demo, there's the title track off of that is a military history one. It's about the Battle of the Sterling Bridge. And we had written a kind of companion piece to that, which was then titled Falkirk, which is about the Battle of Falkirk. So, two battles involving William Wallace. And we had that, and then another traditional Follow Me Up to Carlo that we ended up cutting because we were like, there's two sort of history-ish songs, and then all of the rest of them are like folklore or fantasy. Let's table these. But well, to give a bit of news here, the next thing we're working on is a EP, that we're hoping to put out sometime in 2026, which is going to be 5 songs specifically uh, around sort of Scottish, Irish, and Welsh resistance to English imperialism at different points in history. So it'll have a reworked version of Sterling, it'll have that Falkirk song, and then 3 others.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so glad you're dropping that information now because I was so curious about what was going to be happening next in Myth Begotten. And when you're doing something that cool with a central theme like it, to me, that's what makes EPs more exciting when you're able to like build it around something like that rather than just like a whole collection of B-sides that just didn't fit an album or it's or something like or something that you feel like you have to do because like a contract obligations with a label or something like that. Like when you do, because I'm always going to be an album guy through and through, but when an EP is done right and it has something cool behind it like that, I'm always in for it, and I'm so glad that's happening.
Absolutely agree. One of my favorites, the criminally underrated Unleash the Archers Defy the Skies EP, is one that always springs to mind, where it's like a little 3-track concept album, basically. So yeah, same. I love that sort of thematic cohesion, and it's been pretty cathartic to write, given as an American right now, given everything going on.
Whatever do you
Uh,
mean?
yeah, sort of sublimating feelings about that into these songs about sort of resistance and anti-imperialism has been a good way of processing.
And we all need ways to be able to process right now, with
Yes,
everything that's going on right now. And I'm glad you're able to do that through some like beautiful art like this, through the music of Myth Begotten. And yeah, I can't wait to see how that all turns out.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been really fun to work on. There's going to be some exciting tunes on there. Definitely some of the faster stuff we've done, but stretching our muscles in different directions, which I think will be neat. And we also just like, since the first album is so focused on fantasy and folklore, we didn't want it to have a like jarring effect where it's like, so your first album is all fantasy folklore stuff, and then the second album is like all military history. What the hell? So we're like, do it as an EP and have it be a little more self-contained, and then our second album, when we get to that, which there's already some stuff kind of on the back burner for that already, is going to be more focused on the sort of fantasy folklore elements. There might be some kind of quasi historical stuff going on in there too, but more in a similar thematic vein to Tales from the Unseelie Court than the vein of the EP we're going to be putting out.
Oh yeah, that makes so much sense to do it that way too. And that does make me think to what you were talking about just a little bit ago, just like with everyone that's involved with Myth Begotten, it's like you got your pluses and minuses that go out throughout the entire band. And to me, that's such an important thing. And to go into like that D&D route, like you don't want to have like a whole group of necromancers or a whole group of archers or something like that, because you want to be able to have like different strengths. You want to be able to have someone that can be like more of a barbarian approach. You want to be able to have someone more of like the necromancy, the archer, wizard, whatever the cases are. But it's just like when one can focus more like on the DIY side, one can focus more on the production side, social media, lyricism, the arrangements. I mean, there's so many different things that you can work on. And when someone else might be a little bit stronger or have different ideas with each other, I think that makes the entire group so much stronger that way. And I'm glad that you guys approach that way.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Just over the years, I think particularly just because we've been friends as long as we've been doing music together, and there's that sort of foundational relationship in addition to the band dynamic, and a fair amount of like just built-in trust and camaraderie there. We have developed, and especially over the course of working on Tales, developed a really great working dynamic, and we balance out each other's impulses really well, which has been a lot of fun and really interesting. It's to the extent that we've thought about this a bit more since then, but initially we were kind of resistant to the idea of like, do we want to try to find a drummer eventually? Because will adding a fourth person throw off the vibe of this sort of songwriting partnership? Um, but yeah, no, that process is always a blast. You know, Joe is insanely talented as a orchestrator and just has really good sensibilities for layers and when to pull this back and when to pull this forward and all that. Um, Connor is just a killer mixer and uh, producer in addition to being a great songwriter and having really good just musical sensibilities. And then, I bring my stuff to the table, and it's been fun working in that very collaborative way where we're all adding things to it. Um, it it's fun being in a project where there's someone sort of spearheading and there's like a defined captain, but it's also really satisfying working in this more collaborative environment.
Oh, absolutely. So you kind of touched on it, but I was just wondering about this a little bit deeper. Like you did mention, like would adding a fourth person like throw off the vibes and the atmosphere that you have going on with the band? But with that same token, I would love to be able to hear what these songs sound like in a live setting. So would that ever be a possibility?
It is something that we have discussed. So there's some logistical challenges in the sense that we're all in the Northeast, but I'm in Rochester, so like Western New York, out by Lake Ontario. Connor's in Beacon, so real far downstate near New York City, and Joe's in Boston. So we're all kind of about like 4 or 5 hours away from each other, which makes things a little tricky. But we all want to do this stuff live. We all have day jobs and stuff, and we're not looking to become a hard touring road warrior kind of band, but we all also want to have that experience of playing this stuff live and letting people get to hear it and experience it live who are into it. So that's something we're working on. We are bringing a session drummer on for the EP, and then we've discussed looking for a permanent drummer after that. So we'll see what happens there. We've talked to a couple people about being willing to join us for live duties as well. So I would say it's definitely not going to be a 2025 thing, but there will be more news on that at some point.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that too, and I'm glad that you all have a drive to want to be able to pull that off. I mean, I kind of figured like a full scale touring wasn't really going to be in the cards at least for right now, but like even just like one-off appearances, weekend shows, festivals, something like that, I think would be such a cool idea to be able to do that. And I'm glad that at least the wheels are turning at least a little bit to make that happen.
Yeah, it's something we all want to make happen and are pretty committed to. So I'd say it's definitely a when, not if.
Oh, so very cool. And again, just like with the debut album, there's so much to love that's going on audibly with the album, but I also appreciate visually what's going on as well too. Like with the album cover, which I find to be so striking and represents the music so very well. Like you really get a good idea of what the album could be about just from looking at the album cover alone, let alone before you hit play on it. Like, how did that come together?
So Nathan Kwan is the person who did the album cover and our logo. If you are looking for a logo or a digital art album cover, work with Nathan. He does amazing work. He's super collaborative. We had just a great experience working with him on the cover. But the idea we wanted to go for it is sort of this like reverse image almost of some of the classical paintings you see of like Oberon and Titania and the sort of court of fairies. So there isn't really mythological support for the idea of like sort of a king and queen of the Unseelie court who are, a mirror image Oberon and Titania. We were like, well, it'll be cool though. So we had those as sort of the central figures, sort of like darker versions of that vibe. And then we wanted to have figures and little like hints and pieces representing different songs on there. So you have uh Maltanos as sort of a crone, you have a Dullahan. There's a few crows up in one of the trees that you can see tying into the Twa Corbies. And we just wanted to create that vibe because with the album, our sort of thematic intent, aside from just generally covering like folklore and fantasy, was to have it feel like you are sort of sitting down by the fire to hear someone tell you a bunch of stories. And so we wanted the album cover to sort of predispose the listener to that sort of feeling of preparing to just hear all these tales be told.
Oh yeah, and I think it works both ways. Like if you see it for the very first time, you're very curious about like all the images and figures that you see in the cover, but when you listen to it and you really start to get deeper into the lyrics, like after repeated listens and you go back and look at the album cover, you see what's being represented there, and you just get a big smile on your face when you recognize, oh, that's where that's from. Oh, that's where that's from, and then you can just see how it works that way. It's just so cool like that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, no, I'm really pleased with how it came out. And Nathan was super down to just try different stuff, adding different things in and tweaking things as needed. And it was a great experience working on that with him. We're hopefully going to have something pretty cool for the EP. We've dabbled with some different ideas, so we'll see how it all ends up coming together.
Oh, so very cool. So just to go a little bit left of center here, I mean, we've talked so much about like with Mythbegotten and everything that you do, but you also hinted at other stuff as well. Like, is there anything that you're doing outside of Mythbegotten right now?
Yeah, so Goblin Hovel, the band that I've definitely put out the most material with, who I sing for, we're working on our next full length right now. And that one is going to be sort of uh, our last album was all new material. The album before that was plugged in versions of formerly acoustic Goblin Hovel songs. For the lore, who anyone for anyone who's not familiar with Goblin Hovel, for a long period of our tenure and all of my time with the band up until the album, whatever keeps the lights on, we were fully acoustic folk metal. So still harsh vocals and everything, very metal songwriting sensibilities, but entirely unplugged. And with whatever keeps the lights on, we transitioned into full folk metal mode. And so we're doing another album of revisiting old tracks that we feel like deserve the fully metal treatment. Because, we love the acoustic recordings, but especially for some of the songs, it does sort of feel like, Goku taking off the weighted clothes. Like, it's the extra hard hitting versions of the tracks. So excited for that. And then my other project, The Atrocity Tourist, which it started off as a college thesis project I was doing about murder ballads and the concept that you can sort of trace the lineage of the murder ballads from the old European songs that we have collected and the child ballads and stuff uh, down to like Cannibal Corpse and how you would sort of trace that line. And as a like proof of concept, I did this EP about the Manson family, and I'd always wanted to turn that into a live thing, but just sort of didn't play out for a long time. But then, uh, gosh, I think it was 2 years ago now, put out the Misanthrope split with a band that Derek slash Goblin of Goblin Hollow started called Grey's Anathema, and that was the first new Atrocity Tourist material since Family Man. And we're working on our debut full length album, which I would say probably 2026 as well. I don't know why I keep setting myself up for having to record multiple projects in 1 year, but evidently that's just how it works out for me. But that one should be fun. Lots of different vibes. You know, get your sort of disco black metal in there, get your sort of country metal, lots of different stuff going on.
Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, I wanted to get those bands and projects talked about as well too. I mean, obviously I love what Mythbegotten is doing as well too, but it's just, I wanted to make sure to like capture everything else that you got going on as well too, because I'm so excited about everything that you have going on. And unfortunately, I see Zoom is going to be closing out within the next under 2 minutes, so I just wanted to make sure to get everything that we could. And I just want to thank you so very much for taking the time to be able to talk to me about everything that you got going on. Of course, predominantly with this interview, being able to talk about everything that's going on with Myth Begotten. Of course, the debut album available now. To look forward to the new EP that'll be coming out hopefully next year, and everything else that you got going on as well too. Like all of this has me so excited. It was great to be able to talk to you and get your insight into everything. I learned so much about this. I love the style of how you go about things. Whether it's writing or just explaining everything that's going on. I've had such a great time, and when the time comes for the other projects as well too, whenever you want to be able to promote that stuff, I would love to be able to get deeper into those as well and just show you off in the best light that I can.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having us. When you wrote your first initial review talking about just how a lot of modern power metal is more in the meme direction and there's not a lot of stuff approaching it from that more sincere place, that like really hit of like someone gets it, like what we're doing. And ever since I've really wanted to, do an interview with you and get to chat a bit more. So definitely I'll be hitting you up when the next projects are coming about. And everybody listen to heavy debriefings, read heavy debriefings,
Oh,
and check out Goblin Hovel, Myth Begotten, and The Atrocity Tourist on Bandcamp and streaming services.